Hey guys, Happy New Year! And I'm glad to be able to make the first video for my YouTube channel for 2015. Before I get going on this one, I just want to say I respond to all my emails, but I can't get to all the Facebook messages and YouTube and all that stuff. So if you want to email me, send me an email at will@willterry.com. Um, and or you can friend me on Facebook. I do use my personal channel for that. So just Will Terry, and I live in Utah. And so let's get started. I've been wanting. I say this all the time. I've been wanting to make this video. I've been actually working on this video my whole life. So this is a. I'm going to start the new year off with what I think is one of the most important videos that I'm going to make. Um, why I don't want free money. And actually, this is going to be a timeline video, and this is actually, it could have also been called Why I'm Glad I Didn't Get Free Money. Before, I mean, I'll introduce it through the story, but that is not to say that getting money or getting a helping hand is not ever a good thing. So this is basically specific to this story. So I'm going to just get going on it. In 1989, I was, and I've talked about this in videos before. I was on probation in my college program, my college illustration program, because I wasn't that good, and that actually helps out in this story that I'm going to tell you, and it factors in because I never was that person that was the best in the class. Going through junior high, high school, even elementary school, I could tell you the kids that were always better than me at drawing. But I persevered. I worked really hard, and in 1992, I didn't get kicked out of my college program. In 1992, I actually started getting freelance work for magazines back in the Washington, D.C. area where I grew up. And I'd go into the city and show my portfolio, and I think a couple of places took pity on me and gave me some work, and so I got started there. And then let's fast forward to 1999, around anywhere from 97 through 99, 2000. I actually was doing really, really well financially, and was making well over $100,000 a year. Doing freelance illustration, and I couldn't believe it. My parents couldn't believe it. I think half the my friends couldn't believe it because I think everybody thought that I was going to be. Let's face it, I look like a plumber, right? Not that there's anything against plumbers, but like whenever we go to a party and I'm with people that that not illustration party or something, but with my wife, and if we're in a group of people, people are always. I think they always think that I'm like a drywaller or something, or maybe like I'm down in the sewers cleaning out the sewers or something. Anyway, so I was doing really, really well, and then in 2002, 9/11 happened, and there was a bunch of things colliding, and I've talked about this in other videos too, so I'm not going to get into it, but a lot of things were happening in the illustration world and in with the internet, with computers, with all sorts of things, stock illustration. And then 9/11 was like the stake in the heart, and it just it seemed like everything stopped in the illustration world. And I had projects that were jobs that I was supposed to get that didn't come through. Things were falling through all over the place, and we really went through a financially rough time. And that, I really wish that I would have learned my lesson, because the story that I'm going to tell you is going to get a lot worse than what happened there. So anyway, so that was kind of a hardship. But throughout that whole time, there were still, I've never stopped freelancing. I've always had freelance work. And thank goodness. And that's always been the thing that's kind of kept us going. And right around 2002, my wife actually started to teach school. And so she finished her degree, and it was good timing because my freelance business had really kind of taken a dive. Instead of making this much now, I was making this much down here, and at the same time I switched over kind of from the editorial and advertising work and I started to do children's books. And it was kind of take a couple steps back in order to get some steps forward. And so to be able to work on children's books, it's not like, it's not like you get a children's book job and you just get paid right away. You get the contract and it takes a few months, and then you start working on it, and then they pay you for sketches and things like that. But it's not like it's just overnight money usually. And you have to work hard to, to get your stuff seen, to be able to get it out there. And so anyway, I was making that transition, still getting a lot of editorial work, still getting advertising here and there, but just not as much of it. And then during that time, I had done this little book called Pizza Pat, which if you go on my website at willterry.com, and I have links to all this stuff that I'm talking about below here in the comments, I'm sorry, just right below the video. And so anyway, I did this little book called Pizza Pat. It was a little reader, and I didn't think anything of it. And they had told me, well, it could do that. Sometimes these books do really well. They can sell a lot of copies. This little book, and I got a royalty on it, sold over 500,000 copies. So it really did really well, and it made some really good money, and that was really, really helpful to get those royalty checks coming in. And then that was around 2000. And then around 2005, and this is when we were living out in California, around 2005, my wife started to get sick, and she started having problems with her health, and we just didn't know what it was. And so we decided, well, we've got to go in and check it out. So we went to the doctor, and luckily she was a school teacher, and we had good health insurance and everything. And they came to find out that she had an autoimmune disease. And so we didn't have any idea what that was like or what was going on, and we were really worried. And it turned out that it was going to be a lot of pain. It was going to cost her a lot of pain, but it wasn't going to be life-threatening or anything like that. So it was a lot of kind of a hardship that we were going through, to realize that her life was never going to be the same again. And the things that she was very active, she used to love to run and mountain bike and do all those kinds of things, and she couldn't do that anymore. I'm going to try to hold it together because I hate it when people cry on videos, so I'm not going to do that. And then the very next year, my oldest son, who had, and that's all, I can't get into this whole story, but he really wanted to play football. But he was little. Doesn't take after me. He takes after my wife more. And he worked his way up onto the football team, and this was over like 3 or 4 years out there. And he got onto the starting varsity team at college in his junior year, and he started getting pain in his back and in his legs and everything, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And it was a little bit different than my wife's, but it come to find out he had the same exact disease, and he couldn't play anymore. And he was, he would come home and just cry and say, like, what is wrong with me? And he couldn't figure it out. And the doctors were thinking it was pulled hamstrings and stuff like that, but it wasn't anything like that. And it was the one thing that he really wanted to do, and he was a really good snowboarder. And all that gone, like within a year, he couldn't do any of that stuff anymore. Well, then I started to get really scared because, I had like all this this responsibility to take care of my family, and my wife was still teaching school, and we still had medical insurance, but we were thinking, well, what's going to happen if she can't teach school anymore? So I started to get really scared, and so I actually looked into, of all things, becoming a prison guard out there in California, because the CalPERS that they have out there, the retirement and the medical it's like the best in the country. It's probably one of the reasons why California is in trouble financially, but that's whole nother discussion. But anyway, so I was looking into that, and I couldn't believe it. Here I am, an artist, and I'm getting good works. I'm doing picture books all the time. And by all rights on the outside, people looking in, they're like, well, you've made it. You're an illustrator. And, and I was getting really good jobs, and I was still making good money. On most people's standards, my income at that time was probably around 60 or $70,000 a year. It wasn't crazy money, but it was still pretty good. But with the medical bills that were stacking up, it just was really scary because I just thought I didn't know what kind of treatments they were going to need, and if it was going to get worse, and and what else was in store for us. So I actually went in and did the test and took a class, and you would have seen me in the prison uniform, or the prison guard uniform, walking the beat, and that was what I was really thinking about doing. I was scared to death to do it. I didn't want to do it. In fact, I was petrified to do it, to tell you the truth. And the stories that I had heard from other friends that were prison guards in the town that we lived in were really, really scary. And I did a lot of praying about it, and and really tried to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life, And I actually did have a bishop at my church who told me that he thought I shouldn't become a prison guard. He just really felt strongly that that was the wrong thing for me, and just really felt like that I had a gift that I needed to give other people, that other things that I needed to do with my life, and that it wasn't. That was the wrong move, and I just didn't think it was right at the time. It's interesting. I wasn't even going to talk about that part, but it just kind of felt right. And so anyway, my wife and I both decided, and we just both felt really strongly that I shouldn't do it. So we moved back here to Utah, and this was in 2007. And so she got a job teaching school out here. But in 2007 and 8, the two years that she taught in 2007 and 2008 out here, it was getting to where she would go to school, and she would come home and she would just collapse. She just couldn't handle it anymore. And I just said, you can't teach anymore. And she was saying, well, what are we going to do? We won't have health insurance. I'm not going to be insurable. And it just got to the point where she couldn't teach anymore. So the medical bills started stacking up when we lost the health insurance, and it was just becoming to be this amazingly stressful situation, because I just didn't know what to do. I'm by all outward appearances, people that knew me, friends, illustration friends, and I'm sure some of you guys are watching right now. I'm when people would ask me, well, what are you working on? I'm working on this book. I'm working on that book. I'm working on this and that book at the same time sometimes. And a bunch of other freelance thrown in. And then when we moved back to Utah, I got hired to teach part-time at UVU. And so there was definitely lots of money coming in the door. But with the amount of bills and everything that we had, and when we moved out here, we had scraped together money and we had bought a house, and trying to take advantage of the market, because we thought that was the best move at the time, and we thought that she would be able to continue working. When we were in California, it seemed like everything was going to be okay with her continuing to work, even though she had the disease. And there were other people that work and still have that disease, and they get on some medications that help and things like that. But it just got to the point where she couldn't anymore. And so I was sitting there trying to pay for the house. I was trying to pay for our cars, trying to pay for everything. And I was just falling further and further behind on payments of things and stuff. And one day I'm walking the dog, and I'm walking back to our house, and our car's missing. And I'm like, that's weird, because I didn't think my wife was going anywhere. And I got in, and my son was like, hey, somebody came and took our car. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it's so embarrassing, but we got our car repossessed, and it was just such a low experience. This is such a low feeling to be in. And one of the reasons why I want to tell this story is because I think a lot of times, people look at my videos, or they'll look at my career and stuff, and they'll say, oh, well, he's got it made, everything's going good and everything. There's things that you never know about people, and I think everybody is struggling in different ways. And you have to be sensitive around other people, because you never know what they're going through, Another reason why, well, I'll tie that in later. But so anyway, that was a huge low. I mean, that was like, it doesn't get any lower than that, and it was so embarrassing in front of my kids to feel like, I couldn't pay for our car, and they're thinking, well, what are we gonna do now? Our medical bills were stacking up even more, and then in 2009 and 10, I couldn't keep up with our mortgage payments anymore, and we got one day we got a foreclosure notice, and we had lost our house. And I had told some people about that. It was pretty embarrassing, and that was in 2009, and it just was one of those things where, with my wife losing her job, we just couldn't make those payments anymore, and we ended up just having to short sell the home and move out and move into a rental house. And that was that during the time when we were going through that, where we were trying to figure out if we were going to be able to hold on to the house or not, and what we were going to do. I went through the most stress that I've ever had in my entire life, and I would go because I've talked about this too. I go for walks every day for my exercise. I go hiking up in the hills with the dog, and I would go for hikes. And normally, it was meditation time. It's time that I just kind of, think about work or think about things that I'm doing, or just kind of unwind. And I would go on my walks, and it was almost like I would feel more stress when I was hiking, because my mind was free to just focus on the things that were happening, the losing the house, and what are we going to do, and it just, everything was just kind of coming in on me, and I realized that I had so much stress because sometimes I would get a moment of clarity and think, this won't last forever. Eventually, I'll die someday, and that's when you really know that you're under a lot of stress. When you think that the way out, and I wasn't thinking about ending my life or anything like that. Don't think about that, but I was just thinking that this can't last forever. At some point, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, it will come to an end and the stress will be gone. I mean, there was just no end in sight for the stress that I was feeling. And unless you've ever gone through something like that, and I hadn't before. And so when people would talk about, losing their home, or going through a really stressful divorce or stressful time with, and I think everybody has in some way, I really couldn't relate until I went through that. And boy, that has given me so much compassion for people who are going through hardships like that, because it was the worst thing ever. Okay, but it gets better, and not in a bad way. So I was going through all this, and then finally, the cool thing is, after you kind of go through the 7 stages of grief, you start to realize that, there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Things aren't as bad as you thought they were. We tend to make things actually worse in our minds than they really are. In fact, I ask people, I say, well, what's your number one fear if you go after your dream? If you chase your dream and you go after something that you really want to do, but you're not sure if you're going to be able to make money doing it. And I've said, the number one fear I think a lot of people have is that they will become homeless, that they'll be like out on the street somewhere. And it's like, and then what I've kind of come to realize is I don't personally know anyone who lives on the street. Now, I'm sure that some of you do, but I don't know anybody or any family that's just out on the street. I know some families that are in some rough situations, but or having to move in with family or friends or things like that to get back on their feet. But I think that we tend to make the worst in our mind actually worse than what would really happen in real life. Okay, so during that time, when I was going through that really, really rough time, and I don't want to be specific here, because I don't want the people that I'm going to talk about to know, who I'm talking about. But someone very close to me said, I have a very, very, very wealthy friend who I know would help you out. Would you want that? Would you want them to give you some money and get you back on your feet again and get you back in a house and all that? And I have to admit, like, I'm like, well, let me think about it. And it's like you get these two little, the devil and the angel on the shoulder. And I know that a lot of people would say, well, yeah, why wouldn't you want the money? I don't, maybe it was the way that I was raised, but I was always raised to work hard and to try to make something of myself and to try to be responsible and to try to do the right things. And I will say that some of the purchases that we made with some of our vehicles over the years, with house, things like that, they weren't the best moves, and a lot of the problems that we experienced financially were our own fault. I don't want to just blame it on the economy or blame it on someone else or blame it on the fact that we couldn't keep our health insurance and stuff like that. We were tapped out on two incomes, and we were making good money. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. When we were in California, the two of us together, bringing our income in, it was good money. And there was no reason if we had been living within our means, like anybody should really be doing, and planning for the worst, because you don't know what's going to happen, we probably wouldn't have had to go through all that. Even though it would have been a hardship, we wouldn't have had to go as far as we did. So I'm not trying to paint that picture at all. But anyway, so I had this offer, and the angels saying, you don't want to do that. You need to learn from this mistake that you made and from the situation that you got yourself into. And you need to, by overcoming that, you'll learn really valuable life lessons. And if someone just bails you out, that's not gonna be good. And then I had this little voice on the other shoulder going, "Are you crazy? Take the money." And I really struggled with it, but I responded back to this person and said, "No, I don't want you to do that." Even though, and what was funny is, after I said that, I was kind of hoping that the money would come, that the person would ask anyway and get the money, and I would have said, well, I didn't really want it, but okay, I guess I have to take it then, but in my mind, I was conflicted over that. I wanted it, but I didn't want it, and then it kind of just went away, and I didn't have to think about that anymore, and that was a good thing. So, but during all this time, keep in mind, we're going through this hardship and everything. I'm getting tons of work still. I have good work coming in, but just with the financial mess that we were in, it just wasn't enough to overcome it. I'm still working at UVU, part-time teaching down there, teaching illustration classes. And during that time, embarrassingly enough, I even tried and failed at a few MLMs just because I needed to do whatever. I felt like I was just grasping at whatever came along. And I was like, I need money, and an opportunity would come along, and I'm like, okay, I'll do that. I don't care. I'll humble myself. I don't care what it is. I need to make more money to feed these bills and to get everything taken care of and to get us back on our feet again. And so I did some things that, and worked on with some companies and things that I hated and that weren't me. And the biggest lesson I learned there was, if you don't love what you're working on, you're never going to be able to turn it into a business success. Now, you can work for somebody. You can go and work at Walmart, or you can work at Home Depot or someplace like that. And you don't have to love your job, and you can come home with a paycheck every week. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is working a business opportunity or something like that, to where you're trying to get other people involved. But if you don't love it, that lack of passion is going to show, and you're going to fail. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned by getting involved with things that I really just didn't even care about. And then in 2010, I wrote and illustrated Monkey and Croc, along with 2 other short ebooks, and those had sold, and I've talked about this in other videos too, but they sold 72,000 copies on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And that really made a pretty big chunk of money. But probably the biggest thing that it did was it taught me that I could generate something, create something out of nothing. and not rely solely on the work that was coming in, but I could work extra hours beyond the contracts that I was getting, and spend my time on the weekends. And I did. I worked for the for probably 4 or 5 years in there. I was working 6 days a week all day, pretty much, and I would go for my hike, but I was always working on something. Um, and so that really helped. And then at the same time, I launched my first tutorial, how to illustrate children's books, on my website, willterry.com, which it's still up there right now, and you can get it there. And that has sold, I think on the last count that we had, it's sold somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 copies of that. It's just been amazing. And then that success on willterry.com led me to launch Folio Academy with my business partner Wayne, and we did that in 2011, and it's at folioacademy.com, and we had more tutorials from other artists there, and so that was a big win, because that brought in a lot of money, and that really helped us get back on our feet. That was the extra income that was coming in every single month, on top of the income I was making with my freelance, combined, and we started to pay off our bills. We started to save money, and we just started to really feel like we could breathe again. And then in 2011, also, I started to feel a little frisky, and I launched a Kickstarter called I Hate Reading, which was a story app that I wrote. And it was really my life story. It was about how as a kid I hated to read, and I put it into a little story with a character, and the Kickstarter failed, and that hurt so bad. That was I couldn't show it, but like you try to put on your game face online, like, oh, it's all right, but inside I was like, that was just really tough. Then in 2013, I took Rick Walton's stories, Gary's Place and Gary's Worms, and illustrated those for story apps, and we worked on those together. And then my son actually programmed those, and they cost about $500 each to produce, and then with voice acting and ads and software and fees, for iTunes and stuff like that. So these are iPad apps for little reading story apps. And again, it's called Gary's Place and Gary's Worms, Garys apostrophe S, Gary's Worms and Gary's Place. And so in this by September, I think, of this 2014, they had only earned about $600 gross for both of them. And so they just hadn't even earned back all the money that it costs to make them, and that was real disappointment, because we had gotten 5-star reviews, 4.5-star reviews. We even got the coveted starred review from Kirkus, which, if you're in the children's book world, you know that Kirkus is like one of the main sites that reviews and rates things, and to get a starred review from Kirkus is the highest thing you can get. And we thought, oh my gosh, now people are going to really buy this app. And people didn't, and it just didn't make any money. And then last October, my son decided, well, we always said we wouldn't make it for free, but let's make it for free anyway and just see what happens. And a few of the story app sites and mom blog sites tweeted out that it was free, and overnight we got 11,000 downloads, another 2,000 downloads, and I mean, just like within a week, it was like at 15,000 downloads. And then real quick, the next day we made it 99 cents, thinking, well, we'll take some of that volume and all the hype, and we'll turn that into some money. The day we made it 99 cents, we got 3 downloads, not 300, not 3,000, 3 downloads at 99 cents. And it just kind of told us that people just aren't spending a lot of money on story apps, and that was a hard lesson, because we really put our heart and soul into those apps. So if I can guilt you into buying those apps, I'm just kidding. And we made it free again. It's free now, and it got another 16,000 downloads. So it's like it's crazy. So I consider that one. I don't know if I'd say that's a fail, a win, or a fail. I think it's a win in a lot of ways, but it's also a fail. It's like probably both. Definitely a real painful one. But then in 2014, I also started working on a game, an Xbox, PlayStation, Steam game called Super Stick, with a developer named Dilmer and a bunch of other guys, a team of people working on this game, and it's showing a lot of promise. I wish I could report that that's a win, but it's not out yet. But I do own IP in that, and it's really exciting. Um, and then at the same time, this last year, many of you who follow my YouTube channel here or my blog know that we also launched www.svslearn.com. Again, there's a link right down here. And I can't say that, I can't tell you the numbers, but that business has taken off to the point where I've had to turn down children's book work just to be able to work on the classes that we're doing, and it has been so rewarding. It's been so much fun for Jake Parker and I to work on this together, and when we go and have our meetings together, it's a joy. And I'm doing the exact thing that I want to do, which is illustrate children's books. And I've told my publishers, look, I hate turning these down because I'm afraid that you won't hire me again. So I don't want to turn the switch off. I'm just trying to turn it down for a second while I get this thing going so that I can turn it back on. And I really, really, really want you to hire me to do some books again. And they've all said that they would. Anyway, so that is the story. But the final thing is that we moved into our new house last week, and it was all from the just basically trying and failing at so many different things. And that's where I am right now. I've got the backdrop is actually a little bit different than it was before. I had to actually make it bigger because I'm a little bit further away from the wall. But I even got I'll show you really quick. I've got this is going to be kind of ghetto, but I put up an inspiration wall, and so you can see I put up some sheet metal and put up all kinds of images. Hopefully some of you who I've got your images on the wall can see that. And anyway, so that's kind of the message that I wanted to give you, is that if you work really, really, really hard, good things can happen. And the thing that I get all the time, I get questions from people where they're saying things like, is it going to be worth it? Am I going to be able to, if I go and follow my dreams at making children's books, am I going to be able to make money doing it? And I can't answer that question, and I can't answer how you're going to spend your money. I can't answer if you're going to be done with it like I was. I can't answer, are you going to work hard enough? Are you going to develop the kind of style that that editors are looking for? But I do know that for myself, that when I worked on things, and there's a lot of stories that I couldn't include in here because the video would have been too long. But there are a lot of projects that I worked on over the years where my heart just wasn't in it, and the passion just wasn't there, and it just didn't turn into anything. But the things that I have done in my life that have been where I've been all in 100%, where I've been fully committed, those are the ones that have turned out, and those are the ones that have ended up earning the most amount of money. I think the money is actually a side benefit of your passion. I think that I think that you can't focus on the money, and which is an ironic thing, because when you need money, that's all you can focus on, but I think what you have to focus on is making the thing that you're making the best you can possibly make it, and hope that other people find value in it. When we made our classes at SVS, and we've got, and one that's doing really, really well right now that we haven't even I mean, we haven't even started it yet as our children's book class, and it's been getting so much buzz, and so people have been talking about it so much, and we pre-sold so much of it that it's blown us away, and but none of that would have happened if we hadn't had made other classes that people really liked and really put a lot into it. And that doesn't mean that what we're doing is perfect, and it doesn't mean that we can't improve. And we know a lot of our weaknesses. We need to learn a lot more of our weaknesses and see what we can improve upon. But I think the biggest thing is that we really care about what we're doing, we really love what we're doing. Again, I'm going to finish with saying I'm really glad that I didn't get that money, because if I had gotten that money, I can tell you that there's no way that I would have worked as hard as I did to get back, get back on our feet. And I'll say this too, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but I've been teaching classes at the university. And the thing about teaching at a university is, you're at a certain level. Hopefully, you're competent to be a teacher. Hopefully you're at a level where you can really help the students out and where you're qualified to do it. But once you get the job, there's nobody checking up on you. There's nobody making sure that you work super hard to get the money, right? So the way that the job works is, you and I didn't have this written down, so I hope this goes in the right direction, and I hope I don't regret putting this in there. But the deal is, you get the job, and they're going to pay you a certain amount for the semester, and then the semester's over. Now, I guess you could make the argument that you're going to work really hard because you want to get hired back for the following semester. The thing is, when you're teaching adjunct, if your heart's not in it, if you don't love it, then it's really kind of silly for you to even be there teaching, because they really don't pay much money at all. And if you knew how much they paid for adjunct, it is really, really low. And the reason that I do it is because I love it. I love going down there. I love getting out of the studio. It breaks up my day. I learn tons from it, and I've talked about this in other videos too. I get just as much, and I know that sounds cliche, but I really do. And teaching has actually made me a better teacher, which is actually allowing me to make money doing the teaching on my own. It all leads, it all helps. It all kind of comes back. But anyway, so there's teaching where down there, where this is where I was going with this, where where I'm going to get paid whether I do a crazy, an amazing job, or whether I do kind of a crappy job. When I do the teaching on my own SVS Learn, there's no reputation there. If I go down to UVU, they've got, I don't know, 30,000 students down there, and that's because the university's been there for, it's been a tech school, and it's been a state school, and it's been a bunch of things, but it's probably been there for, I don't know, 80 years or something like that. And it's going to have a student body. It's going to have a student body next year. They don't have to. They've got a reputation. But when we started this SVS Learn, we had zero reputation at all. So in order to get people to get interested in it, the classes that we did, we had to work really, really hard. In fact, we learned that we probably didn't work hard enough on the first classes. So now we're working even harder. And for the children's book class that we're launching in January here, and this is 2015, so it's just we just turned the new year. I wrote a 200-page, it's over 200 pages actually, PDF that goes, which is a manual that goes with that children's book class that you get with the children's book class, and a 20-page workbook. And the reason I bring that up is I never wrote any of that when I taught the children's book class for the university. Why? Because they weren't paying me for it. They weren't paying me that much, and they weren't saying, in order for you to teach this class, you've got to write this manual. So what did I do? I went in there and I wrote down an outline, and I had a pretty decent outline, but nothing compared to what we've put into this class, because it's our own thing, and quite frankly, we needed the money. So we wanted this to be a success. We wanted people to find lots of value in it. We wanted people to buy it. I can promise you, if someone had given me money, if this person that I was talking about had given us money, there's a really good chance that I wouldn't have done any of this, because I wouldn't have had to, because we would have had a lot of things taken care of, a house, and freelance is easier. Freelance is easier. It's just you get the job and you listen to music and you put on Netflix and stuff, and just enjoy, as I'm drawing. So I needed that necessity to take care of my family, and it seems to all be paying off simply because I didn't get that windfall that I think would have kind of wrecked things. So anyway, I've made this long enough. My final words are: do not subscribe to this channel unless you like to see more and to hear more of this kind of video. All right. Thanks a lot for watching.